Welcome to the Agruss Law Firm video podcast. We are a different kind of law firm, and that's on purpose. At Agruss Law Firm, we see you as a person and not just a client, and that makes us better at what we do. We're not just lawyers, and you're not just a client. We're friends, neighbors, and family. This is a show about all things legal-ish that friends, neighbors, and family want to know. This is Season 2, Episode 1, and today we're talking short sales with Grant Griffiths. Grant's the owner of the Short Sale Guy in Naperville, Illinois. Grant and his team offer real estate solutions for homeowners who are having financial issues. Grant, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to be on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we have a chance to talk today. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Short Sale Guy and what you and your team do there?
Yeah, perfect. And I loved your intro for the law firm, mentioning that, you're a different kind of law firm and, it's about the individual person and they're not just a client. And, that's our approach too. It really starts with the client's goals and what they're looking to do. And then we essentially roadmap every option possible, but also are realistic and letting them know what most likely is going to happen and what their best chances of succeeding are. So, we always start there, but essentially we help facilitate and manage the process of any real estate transaction, but our concentration are in short sales. And a short sale is defined by a property having the mortgage balance greater than the property value. So if you were to come up at closing, essentially you would be short from what is actually owed. So that's where we negotiate with the bank on the seller's behalf in order to have them essentially get rid of this anchor that's been weighing them down.
Got it. And what are some of the reasons why someone would want to do a short sale?
Yeah, and it really brings to the first, bullet point on, who qualifies for a short sale. So there must be some sort of financial hardship. So whether you experience a job loss, divorce, any sort of health issues, that's kind of the main aspects there. So, and most of these folks are in foreclosure as well. So, those that are having financial issues, we see many clients go in the bankruptcy route, either, while they're in bankruptcy, possibly contemplating filing for bankruptcy, or after it's been discharged, they still have, this piece of real estate that's weighing them down. And, we help eliminate that.
Got it. And speaking of foreclosure, what is the difference between a short sale and a foreclosure?
So a foreclosure is the process in which your home is sold essentially without your ability to do much about it. Now, obviously you can talk with an attorney and there's other options to do to, postpone that foreclosure, but it's the legal process in which, a property is essentially sold back to the bank or the note holder that actually owns the property. Because when you have a mortgage, technically you don't own the property until you pay it off, but even taking a step further, you don't technically own it because you are still paying taxes on it. So you still have to pay someone to live there. But that's kind of what we're seeing there.
When someone realizes they're having financial issues and they sort of see in the next couple of months things are going to get rough, prior to hiring a bankruptcy attorney, before foreclosure proceedings start, do clients come to you and say, "Hey, Grant, we both lost our jobs. We're having financial issues. We missed a mortgage payment. We think things are going to start spiraling out of control. Should we do a short sale?" Or is it usually people come to you after a foreclosure proceeding, after bankruptcy, and they want to then try to do a short sale?
Yeah, it's pretty much across the entire board because in the state of Illinois, we go through the judicial process of foreclosure. So it's a bit more drawn out, or it can be, compared to other states. And, people that know that sometimes, try to take advantage of the system. And it really, again, it depends on their goals, what they're looking to do. If they already have plans to, move out of state and already have everything set up, then they really could, care less. They just, let me know where to sign because we got to get rid of this thing. If the folks need to stay in their home for a longer period of time while they try to figure it out, that's where, attorney can come into place and help on either the foreclosure route. As you know, the Chapter 13 can delay or eliminate the foreclosure. And then also with a short sale, that's another way to delay the foreclosure. Once we are working with the bank, they can essentially eliminate that. Now, it's not guaranteed, but we have done that quite a few times in the past where we've stopped a foreclosure just because we've gone through with the short sale. The bank sees that we have an executed contract, a ready, willing, and able buyer, and they're willing to part ways, because it's really in everyone's best interest to not go the foreclosure route, because from the consumer standpoint, and again, it depends on if you have filed for bankruptcy or not. There's some certain nuances, so I always want to consult with an attorney there. But the foreclosure, it stays on your record longer. Most likely you want to buy something of value, or at least when you're renting, the next landlord is going to see that, and it's much more detrimental, on the credit. But then on the flip side, we get attorneys that say, well, the credit's already shot, so, that really doesn't matter to my client. Well, I can appreciate that, but, unless you structure the bankruptcy to where the home is included, the client's not responsible, and they don't want to make any, larger purchases in the next 7 years, or, don't want to rent anywhere reasonable for the next 7 years, then, it's probably in their best interest to do a short sale, not to mention the fact that it's going to give them more time, because we're able to delay that foreclosure process, give them enough time to figure out where they need to go, want to go. And on top of that, we always ask the bank for a relocation incentive. So right now the going rate is $3,000 that the clients get at closing. And it really depends on the bank, what the balance is, the property value, and how the clients are working throughout the process, whether or not the bank would say yes or no to that. It really helps the bank's perspective. If the property is owner occupied, then they're able to have more let's just say ammo in their pocket to tell a convincing story as to why they should receive that. But for the most part, when someone is facing foreclosure, real estate agents and real estate professionals, I would say, get a bad rap because there are quite a lot of bad ones. It's one of the most turnover industries that we have. And the difference between, talking to a real estate professional first as opposed to an attorney is that, quite frankly, attorneys are held to a higher standard because they're more educated in their field. They went to school, they got their, PhD in that field. So I think there's a trust level going to an attorney first. And then once that attorney has a resource, like us to facilitate the real estate side of things, then that trust level is already, meshed with the attorney, and they're willing to, play ball and do what's in their best interest, which what we had decided would be getting rid of the property as a short sale. So kind of a long-winded answer there, but kind of encompassing as much as possible.
Yeah. So it sounds like most of your clients then come to you who've been referred to you by either bankruptcy attorneys or foreclosure attorneys.
Correct.
Okay. To me, it seems like a short sale, and you mentioned it, and I don't know much about it, but to me, it seems like it would be in everyone's best interest to do a short sale, right? The homeowner, the bank. Do you ever see a situation where for a bank to initiate foreclosure proceedings, it just seems like an absolute mess. Do you ever see a situation where, in other words, are the banks always inclined to do a short sale, or do they sometimes say, no, we're just going to go through with foreclosure?
So every bank is a little bit different. They have their own processes, paperwork, and department to handle the loss mitigation, which is what this is. But it's definitely in the bank's best best interest because, like you said, just the paperwork itself, having to pay, an attorney to, go to court on their behalf, not to mention the legal, timeline to figure that out. Plus, I mean, it's a dead asset. It's not paying them anything. It's costing them every single month with, the taxes and maintenance if that's structured into it. So yeah, definitely in the bank's best interest to, sell as a short sale. But an issue that we've come across too, it doesn't happen often, but it's happened, often enough to take note of it, is the servicer. So essentially who you pay your mortgage to. So for me, that's SunTrust Bank. That's my personal residence. That's the servicer of my loan. The end investor is the one that really makes the final decision, which in most cases is Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And their process to facilitate a short sale is absolutely fantastic. Their streamlined approach through the I think it's Home Path website to do that. But so they're most likely to pay a ball. However, we've come across instances where there's been these smaller hedge funds that essentially scoop up a basket of these mortgages, and then depending on what their investment goals are, they may deny the short sale. So we have approval from the servicer, all the departments are on board, our clients have submitted all their financial paperwork, we have an executed contract, we have the net that is going to be going to everyone involved, but then the end investor says no. And that's where, we do our best to try to reason, and let them know, hey, this is going to go into foreclosure and you have the chance to get nothing if you're the second lien holder. And, sometimes they're just too stubborn to listen, or they have an end investment goal to let all the properties go to foreclosure, purchase them back, and then, make them into rentals or rehabs or whatnot. So, but what is unfortunate is that we don't know until further on in the process, how that's going to go. That's why, we try to do as much as we can up front, because these things take time. It's a short sale, but it's anything but shorts. On average, we tell clients it'll take anywhere from 3 to 6 months from contract to close, but that doesn't include any sort of marketing in between, that what the buyer's financing is in place. And then if there's any additional liens on the property, that'll take time to negotiate down and handle, but on average, about 3 to 6 months.
It's interesting that you mention servicers, because we deal with that a lot at my office. For example, we've got a case going right now with Mr. Cooper, which used to be Nation Star. And
Yep.
We've had cases with Aquin and other mortgage servicers. And I find when mortgage servicers are involved, my clients inevitably just have tons of issues. So anyway, it's interesting that it seems like your experience with servicers is a little bit better than my experience. When someone contacts me and they say that they're having issues with a mortgage servicer, it usually, dates back a long time, and there's issues with payments and the mortgage getting transferred over and payments not being applied and penalties and interest. And so your experience though with servicers is, at least in a short sale arena, is a little bit better.
Yeah, there are a few. Aquin, or the ResNet, is a bit of pain in the ass to deal with at times, because sometimes departments switch, but it's really key, at least on the short sale side of things, to figure out who your case manager is and then have direct contact with them. And then what we do is have a follow-up system every 2 days where we follow up with the bank, because they're not going to be proactive on telling you where you're at in the process. And that's what, we do, is we quarterback the entire transaction and making sure that it's a fluid, process. Because at the end of the day, our job is to have the client's best interest in mind, but then to close the transaction, because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved, quite a bit of money at stake. So we just have to make sure that it closes as smoothly as possible.
Got it. What does a short sale mean for a buyer?
So what a short sale means for a buyer, is you're probably going to get a property that is under market value. So you're buying at a discount, which is a good thing. The way, my team and I, how we list short sales is that the property is sold as is. So what that means from the buyer is that, since you are getting it under market value, most likely there's probably some repairs that you're going to have to put in place, maybe some cosmetic updates that need to be done. So, most of the time, a short sale is not going to be a turnkey property where you absolutely fall in love with everything about it and you don't want to change a thing. I mean, there's most likely something, because you have to think too, the people that are selling are in some sort of distress, whether that be, well, financial for one, it could be emotional, it could be, physical, so whatnot. So the properties, usually for the most part aren't in the greatest condition. And I've seen quite a few interesting things along the way of what people have left behind. But so for one, buying at a discount. Two, they have to have the time and patience in order to purchase. So if, let's just say, the only way you can purchase a property is by selling your current one, using those proceeds and purchasing a short sale, I would not advise that, because you're essentially at the mercy of someone purchasing your house, which in these days shouldn't be a problem, but then you're kind of stuck in limbo because you don't have a place to live. Either you'll have to lease it back or find temporary housing. So, I mean, that is an option, but for me, I wouldn't recommend it. I would, person purchasing a short sale should either be an investor that has the timeline to wait, or B, someone who isn't scrambling to find a place to live and they have, 3 to 6 months plus to wait this out.
Got it. And when you're a buyer involved in a short sale, can you negotiate the sale price?
So you can, but it depends on where the short sale is at in the process. So for us, when we get a file, we initiate the process, make sure we get the short sale packet from the servicer. Client executes that, we walk them through it, they provide their financials, and then it'll depend on the bank whether or not they have someone come out to perform a BPO, or they may just wait until there's an offer. Again, it depends on the bank. But circling back, sorry, I was rambling. What was the question again?
Yeah, if you're a buyer, can you negotiate a short sale price?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, most definitely. So, the thing is and again, we won't know. It'll depend on the process of what the, not only the BPO, but then the net proceeds for the bank. So the BPO agent will come out and determine a value. Sometimes they'll do a drive-by, which I really don't like, because you have a lot of generalizations and, people spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes, if that. And if you're evaluating an asset, you got to spend more than 10 minutes looking at the exterior to do that. You really don't get a good feel until you not only look at the interior, B, look at the disclosures and see what is disclosed to the property, what are its faults, but then also communicating with the selling agent so they can let you know kind of what's going on. That's why I'm always proactive with the BPO agents, just to make sure that they're not out of line, because we have had deals fumble in the past because a BPO agent didn't know the difference between their ass and a hole in the wall, and they overpriced the property. And then once they do that, the bank is like, okay, well, this BPO agent says it's here, so we need X amount of proceeds. So when that happens, then what we do is have the buyer, then they always have the right to perform the inspection. If they're getting a mortgage, they almost have to have an inspection done. Right. And we see exactly what's wrong with the property. But then if they're really far off and the bank comes back and says, hey, we need more money, then what I advise the buyers and the buyer's agent to do is, okay, you have the inspection report. We need an itemized list of everything that needs to be repaired and a cost associated with that. Even better if you can get a local contractor to put their letterhead and, essentially have them quote the job. That right. way, when we come back and say, hey, look, we can come up, but it's not going to be to your number because we have all these repairs needed. And that's what, we need in order to close the deal. And most of the time that will get the job done, because then it comes back to the bank. We have evidence that says, hey, we're going to stick here because based upon market dynamics, comparable sales, plus the overall condition with a detailed itemized report of what needs to be fixing, this is the price that the home should sell for.
Got it. And I want to step back to the beginning when we were talking about what exactly a short sale is, because I want to make sure I understand. So when someone gets referred to you who just filed bankruptcy, they're in foreclosure, whatever the situation is, and they say, hey, I want to do a short sale. What's the next step? Like, don't you have to talk to the bank and who holds the note to make sure you get permission to do it?
So the first step in a short sale is you have to be at least 2 months behind on your mortgage. Now, we're not advised and are not able to let a client know, hey, you need to stop paying your mortgage to start the process, but you got to stop paying your mortgage to start the process. So most of these folks, they are behind, most likely significantly behind. So that's not going to be a problem. But when my first interaction with these people, whether it's a phone call or whatnot, is I always have a general acronym that I use called BMOP, BMOP. And essentially what that is, the B for bankruptcy. So have you filed for bankruptcy? If so, what type and when? And if you have, has it been discharged or where is it in the process? M is mortgage, who the mortgage is held with and how many are there. O is if the property is currently occupied. And then P are what are your plans? Because we want to make sure that, they have a plan set up. If not, we have another division of our team that helps with the placement into rentals and other things, just to make sure that they have plans, because most of these folks are probably in some sort of denial, and we're their reality, as are the attorneys, that says, hey, this is what the situation is. We can't fix it, but we can work with what we have and we can plan accordingly.
Right. So they come to you, they're 2 months behind, or 2 months behind on their mortgage. You figure out if they're in bankruptcy. And then what's the next step? You've got to reach out to who holds the mortgage and get permission to put it in a short sale.
So the next step would be to get all of the paperwork started on my end in order to sell the home. So I have my listing agreements, I have my disclosures, the company paperwork and whatnot. We'll get pictures done and then start to list the property. Most likely, again, it depends on what the client wants to do. If they want to have a little bit more time, if it's around the holidays, maybe we'll wait. But the first step, besides the paperwork that's from our brokerage, is to set up the paperwork between the bank, us, and the client. So we have a third-party authorization form. So we're able to speak to the bank on the client's behalf. And we first off determine what the best way to send that in. Most likely it's fax, and which department that is. Most likely it's loss mitigation. So we fax that and then figure out how to obtain the short sale packet. Every servicer, every bank has one. It's typically 5 to 7 pages, and it'll just let them know, hey, we want to perform loss mitigation. We don't want to keep the house, so we would like to sell it via short sale. And depending on the bank, they may list their monthly income, monthly expenses, kind of have a snapshot of their current financial status. And then that we can give to the bank. And then we kind of go from there, and whatever the bank needs at that time, we provide it as soon as possible. And then the follow-up starts, and then marketing the home, getting the buyer, and making sure everyone's on the same page of the process.
Got it. So the bank you've got to get permission from the bank before you list it.
No, we do not need, we just need permission from the homeowner to list, because they are still on title, regardless of how far behind they are. They're still on title. They still most likely live in the home or have some sort of relationship with it. So it's first making contact with them, that they're on the same page. We've answered all their questions. And then we relay to the bank, says, hey, look, this client is no longer going to be interested in keeping this home. We are selling it via short sale. So just let you know, this is what we're doing. What do you need on our end in order to facilitate that? And then they get the process started on their end.
Okay, now I understand. So the seller, you and the seller agree on the short sale, you start the paperwork, you list the property, and then when a buyer comes in and makes the offer, that's the reason it takes so long, is you then need to go back to the bank, and depending if it's the bank, a servicer, or some hedge fund who actually owns a bundle of mortgages, you've got to then get the final okay. So even though you post it as a short sale, you've got a buyer who's interested in it, and you get an offer, it all may still be denied, and the bank could ultimately just foreclose on the house.
Unfortunately, yes, it can. And there's been, situations. That's why, again, we try to start as much as we can, as soon as we can, because there's a lot of time, energy, and effort that goes into this. And we get paid absolutely nothing until it closes. We don't charge the client anything. The client never pays anything. All the bank pays all of the fees. So all the realtor fees, all attorney fees, title, closing costs, additional liens that we negotiate, that the bank either pays or the buyer ends up and has to pay. But yeah, there's been times where there was a second lien holder, a smaller bank, and typically the second is only allowed a certain percent, like ballpark, or a dollar amount, like let's just say $5,000, something. It's typically 6, but the second lien holder said no, they needed more. And if they say no, then we can't move forward. And long story short, the property did go into foreclosure. It did foreclose, and the second lien holder got nothing. So that's the position that we take. And if you're able to talk with the decision maker, if it gets to that point, then most of the time, I'm able to kind of throw some logic in there and say, at the end of the day, would you rather have nothing or take, this now? So but sometimes people can't get out of their own way.
No, totally. And it's not, I have conversations with my clients all the time about settlements and offers, and whoever we're suing, their financial situation. And, probably much like in your situation where you're talking to a bank, you've got an offer, it's a short sale. And if the short sale goes through, you can tell all the parties involved, I can guarantee what's going to happen. This is going to happen. And I have those conversations with my clients where I say, look, if you accept this settlement offer, I can guarantee what's going to happen. I can guarantee how much money you're going to put in your pocket. And if we don't and move forward, there's no guarantees. And so it sounds like in your situation, you're having the exact same conversations, just with different parties. So along those lines, what percentage of the people who come to you do you actually see the short sale go through? Is it 50%, 75%?
We're at about 90% that they go through. So,
it's pretty good.
Very
It's
high
a good number.
success rate. Yeah. Very, very high success rate. But, there are those nuances that come through that at the end of the day, we've exhausted all of our energy and efforts, and they just say no. But that's not to say that it can't happen later down the road.
Right.
With foreclosure and the courts now, everything is so backlogged, and I'd have to speak with someone who's got their pulse on foreclosure courts, but I know they're still relatively slow, if even open yet. So with the moratorium still in place, it's going to be a while before we're going to see the flood on there. But it's kind of, if you take a 30,000 foot view, back in March, we had our regular foreclosures that should have, hit the market, gone through court. Essentially everything stopped, until about now. Still, it still stopped. And then you add a pandemic on top of that. So there's going to be quite a few folks already in foreclosure. And I'm on an automatic mailer, and I see about every week there's anywhere from 35 to 60 new foreclosures filed in Cook County, and I'm expecting that number to rise.
Yeah, and you're talking, we're talking March of 2020 is when the moratorium happened, right, with foreclosures. And right now, you and I are talking, it's January 2021. When is that moratorium lifted?
It keeps getting delayed. I believe the last time I saw it was like the end of January, but I've been really trying to stay in my lane, and so I just kind of put my nose to the ground and focus on obtaining new clients and working on the deals I currently have. And, if I'm interested in that, I'll reach out to the expert foreclosure attorney that, really knows what's going on and kind of get his thoughts on there. So that's what I kind of do there. So I'm not the expert on dates, but I know the can keeps getting kicked down the road. And the farther we do that, the harder it's going to hurt once the Band-Aid's ripped off.
Yeah, totally. So people are still filing foreclosures, but there's a moratorium as far as moving forward with them. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, on that and evictions. And, I still am, not the expert on that, but, when it comes to the eviction process, it's been quite difficult to move through that on top of Illinois and the process it takes, regardless if there's a pandemic, to evict someone out.
Right.
I was involved in 2, I call them peaceful evictions this year. One was a short sale, the other one was not. But essentially, and I feel like one of my strengths is being able to relate to just about anyone, regardless of, age, sex, gender, income, whatnot. And I really try to get a sense and put myself in their shoes and just, communicate with them as best as possible. And, they fought me on tooth and nail, but I've learned through experience that if you kill them with kindness, then it really pays dividends in the long run and just makes things run smoother, regardless of how you feel. And once I get in my car, I'll yell at quite a few explicit natured items. But then I just think, okay, and I forgot where I saw this, but it's called the 5-5 rule. And if something is not going to affect you in 5 years, then you shouldn't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it. And so that's what I do. I kind of get my yell out and then I move on, because you can't, dwell on the past, and you just got to keep moving forward.
Yeah, totally. I tell people in my office all the time, kill them with kindness. When we have a difficult judge, a difficult defense attorney, a difficult client, whatever it is, 100% agree with you on killing people with kindness. How does a short sale appear on your credit report, and how is it different than a foreclosure, bankruptcy? How long does it stay on your credit report?
Yeah, so it'll stay on your report around 3 years or so, maybe a little longer. Again, it depends on the bank, how they're willing to work with you on that end. Now, there are some extenuating circumstances, but there was actually a transaction that happened. The sellers had a short sale. On the day they closed the short sale, they purchased another property. Now, granted, they had 40% down, but, and that was about 3 years ago, but there are still programs in place to, say if you have a significant down payment, they'll take that credit as a secondary option and just kind of look at your current financial status, because things happen, life happens, maybe a couple, decisions went the wrong way. And so you had to let go of the house through a short sale. But yeah, there's definitely options out there for folks, because you have to think too, when you're not paying on your mortgage for the short sale, you have this extra money hopefully coming in that should be applied. So where is that going? So we always advise, try to bank that as much as you can in order to, set yourself up for a successful short-term future.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other question here that I'm interested in. So when the short sale goes through, it's obviously, like you said in the beginning, it's selling for a lesser amount than what the mortgage is, right? So let's say the mortgage is 200 grand and the short sale goes through at 150 grand. So there's a $50,000 difference. What happens with that money? Can the seller get sued on it? Can the bank still go after them for the difference? Are there tax consequences? What happens?
Yep. So common question we get, and again, not to throw the lawyer answer out there, but it depends.
No,
so
totally.
when you it really depends on where the person's at. So let's just say they are in foreclosure. They do nothing. They get, calls, whatever. They just say, screw it. I'm sitting on my couch, or I'm moving out. I'm abandoning the property. I'm not doing any lick of paperwork, nothing whatsoever. It sells, at auction or whatnot. That homeowner is liable for that deficiency judgment. Okay. and they're going to be sued, and they'd have to figure that out from the attorney route. Through the short sale, what we always do is negotiate with the bank to waive that deficiency. So in your example, the mortgage was $200,000. It sold for $150,000. There's a $50,000 deficiency there. We always confirm that in the approval letter, it says something where the client is not liable for that deficiency. It is waived, and some sort of verbiage along that lines. Now, in a bankruptcy, you'd have to consult with your attorney there, but there's certain nuances in a 7 that if it's, whether or not it's included, then essentially that is waived. So then there's less motivation for folks, but that's where we kind of get into the credit and timing aspect and the relocation incentive for them. So yeah, they could be liable if they do absolutely nothing. Most of the time, at least with us on the short sale route, we get that waived. As far as a tax implication goes, it depends on the lender and whether or not they send a 1099. Now, we have had instances where the bank does send that for the difference, and then they could be taxed on that. So that's where you need to consult with a tax advisor in order to strategize to mitigate that. However, some of these folks are in quite a low income bracket, so they would qualify essentially of having like little to no assets. So regardless if what the deficiency was, they couldn't be taxed on it because they're in such a low income bracket. So that's another thing you want to verify with an attorney and accountant with on where you're currently at financially in order to mitigate that, or if you're even going to be liable for something like that.
Yeah. So, and that happens often with my consumer rights cases, where when we settle cases, oftentimes, or, if there's ever an opportunity to resolve the underlying debt for our clients, we always want to help them out with that. And sometimes part of the settlement with whoever we're suing for whatever reason, they will offer debt waiver. And we are well aware of that fact, because debt waiver for our clients oftentimes means a 1099, and it oftentimes means income. And so if you're getting, debt, or it's considered as income for tax purposes. So when we're settling cases, we'll call the client up and say, hey, good news, X, Y, and Z. And by the way, they're going to waive that $5,000 of credit card debt you owe, so you're not going to have to pay it. But then on the flip side, there could potentially be tax consequences. So yeah, it's a slippery slope. And I'd imagine in your line of business, when you're dealing with mortgages and houses, you're not talking about a short sale over $5,000 difference. You're talking, probably more along the lines of the example I gave you, where it's $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000.
Yeah, it's usually tens of thousands, but at the end of the day, the tax implication is one of the lowest items of concern of the homeowner. And, I just have to keep reinforcing, the light at the end of the tunnel is you not have to worry about this house. Yes, there could be tax implications down the road. And now, even with the pandemic, with all the changes in the tax law, I don't know how far you can, kick that can down the road, or if the IRS would settle, for less there, because everything's negotiable. So, yeah, I mean, there could be, but there's definitely ways around that. And now, given the current circumstances, there's ways to draw that out or significantly reduce it, or both.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to some easier questions. I want to do what I like to do at the end of my podcast, is to ask some rapid fire questions. So what's your favorite animal?
Yeah. Favorite animal? Probably be a penguin. My kids love it. I was at the zoo, and they're kind of fun to look at. They're funny looking, and they're quick. And one of my favorite movies is the Batman Returns, and Danny DeVito plays a hilarious penguin.
All right. How about your favorite app? What app do you use the most?
Let me look at my phone. I know it's boring, but probably Gmail. But recently, BlockFi.
What's that?
So it's a wallet to hold your crypto, and you get paid interest just to hold it.
Oh, interesting. BlockFi?
Yeah.
Huh.
Look into it.
So, are you into crypto? Are you into cryptocurrency?
Should
we talk about that after the podcast?
Yeah, we could talk about it after. That's fine.
What's your favorite food?
Food. If I can't get a fillet, then probably a buffalo chicken sandwich.
What's your perfect vacation?
Hawaii. My wife and I went there on our honeymoon, went to Oahu, had a hotel on the beach. And I've been saying we need to get back. I mean, for a vacation, it's you pay for value, and you get that when you go to Hawaii. So
Totally.
enough said.
Finish this sentence. Weekends are for
family. However, business is business. So I'd be lying if I said that I spend, all day, every day with my family. On the weekends, recently, it's definitely been for family, but I also have a real estate business, and sometimes you have to coordinate all the time. You got to coordinate with the client schedule, and if that's the weekend, then you got to do that. So I would say family definitely comes first, but there is a sprinkle of business in there as well.
Sounds good. And if you weren't doing real estate, what else would you be doing?
Pharmaceutical sales, since that was my previous and somewhat current position.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll put this up on the video at the bottom of the video, but what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Whether, phone, email, website, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so really proud that I just revamped my website. theshortsaleguide.com has my direct information there. You can send a text through the website, reach out directly there, but definitely website, best way to get a hold of me, theshortsaleguide.com.
Okay, perfect. This was great. I appreciate it, Grant, for you joining this video podcast, and everyone should make sure to stay tuned for our next episode.